All right, so a while ago, I got the Pixel 6 devices in, and I was super excited. Like $899 for the Pro model, $599 for the base model, new hardware, new camera system, and I'm like this is gonna be the phone of the year, right? This has to be the best phone, especially that base model at that $599 price point. So I started testing it, and then things just didn't play out the way that I thought they would. And there's so much to talk about. So let's start off with the camera system, because to me, the camera system is what defines this product, but it also kind of defines the Pixel brand. So let's start off with the main sensor. In good lighting conditions, the photos look really good, as you'd expect. The contrast is pumped up a little bit, kind of the way that Pixels often do it, and it's no different this year, and the images are nice. Now, when you get to more difficult shots, like when you need to have a little bit more dynamic range, it does well. Like the images have a lot of detail in the dark areas, and same with the highlights, stuff doesn't look overexposed or anything. It has a very good ability to capture regular shots, like well-lit, proper conditions. This is good at it. But the truth is, everybody is as well. In 2021, all the major players in the smartphone game with their flagship phones, they all shoot really well in good lighting conditions. Even last year's Pixel 5. And to me, the Pixel 6 is strangely similar to the Pixel 5 on the main sensor. Like it's got the same kind of coloring, very similar in dynamic range, but it's also the sharpness. Pixel 5 and Pixel 6 have very similar sharpness to their photos, and that to me was surprising. Like the Pixel 6 is running new hardware, new image sensor, new lens, but it's so close. Now, that's not to say that that's poor, right? The Pixel 5 had great images to begin with, but I just thought based on the marketing material and based on how they talked about this camera system that there would be a noticeable improvement in sharpness. But to me it isn't. It's got great images, but I wouldn't crown it a clear winner. Now in terms of the ultra wide, the images feel a little soft. I was hoping for sharper images, but again, it's quite similar to the Pixel 5 from last year with older hardware. Now in terms of low light photography, this is where I feel like brands differ the most, right? In terms of like the method and the route that brands take to brighten up a dark scene, everyone's doing it a little bit differently. I would say that the Pixel 6 is one of the best here. It's able to capture what looks to be the brightest image, both in the main sensor and the ultra wide, but the colors aren't as accurate. Like I think the iPhone 13 has colored these low light photos a bit more true to life, but in terms of brightening up an image and keeping it clean, I would say that the Pixel 6 is the best, particularly with the main sensor. Now in terms of the zoom, so on the Pixel 6 Pro, you have that 4x optical zoom. It shoots well in properly lit conditions and in low light scenarios. It has an incredible amount of detail. When you hit that 20x zoom though, the pixels get pretty grainy. So this is done through software. It's not 20x optical obviously, and the iPhone only goes up to 15x in terms of software, but the S21 Ultra, that also hits 20x if you throw in the software. And if you compare the Pixel 6 Pro and the S21 Ultra, the S21 Ultra has less grain. Like it feels like the software is quite aggressive at smoothing everything out, and I think it takes away from the image, but on the Pixel 6 Pro, you do have more grain, but I feel like a lot of the detail is retained. And I personally prefer that look, but I do think it's subjective. Like I think there's gonna be a good number of people that prefer that smoother kind of look from the S21 Ultra. There's no macro capabilities. It's something that basically every other flagship phone delivers nowadays, including the iPhones, but there's no kind of ultra-wide macro capability on either of the Pixel devices. Okay, let's talk about video. So this to me is the biggest letdown of the Pixel devices this year. So in the past, Pixels have always struggled with video. In terms of just image quality and stabilization, it's always just been a step behind almost everyone else, but particularly with the iPhones. And it feels so similar, once again, to the Pixel 5. And I'm surprised at how mediocre that video quality is. Like, it's new camera system, new hardware, how does it still look like that? Like, the colors feel off to me. It's just surprising to me that this is what the new Pixels can do. Now, I'm someone that came from the Pixel 5. This was the phone that I used for the majority of the time last year, and I'm used to the images, I'm used to the videos. I think I was just expecting these to fix a lot of the issues that the Pixel 5 had, but a lot of it still remains. Now, in terms of the front-facing cameras, on the 6 Pro, it's a nice image. It's kind of standard for a flagship device like this, but on the 6, like the regular 6, it doesn't look good. I feel like the colors are really washed out and the skin tone is off on it. It's not the best. So overall, I would say that the camera systems on these devices, to me, they're a little underwhelming. And maybe my expectations were too high. Like maybe I bought into the hype, bought into the marketing, and I conned myself into believing that these ones would be amazing. They're good, but so was the Pixel 5 last year, and so are the competition, right? I feel like the Pixels this year, they don't stick out as being something special in terms of just raw technical capabilities of the camera systems. However, I find these things very enjoyable to shoot, and a lot of it is the software. Like that new Magic Eraser tool, it does a pretty good job at removing unwanted objects or people from photos. Now, there's limitations, like it's best at removing items that are easily filled with simple texture, like removing an object and replacing it with grass or sky. It's good at that, but more complex scenarios, you're gonna see some kind of visual artifacts. And the thing is, all of this stuff can be easily done with either a third-party app like Snapseed, or if you're good with a photo editing tool, you're gonna do a way better job than Magic Eraser, but this is built right into the photo app. It's right there, it's frictionless, it's easy to use, and it's super fast. So for certain applications, for certain people that just wanna play with it, it's really neat. And then you also have your action blur and the long exposure effects that are also done through software and also visually imperfect. Like there's artifacts if you look for it, but they're fun to use, and because it's built right into the photo app, it's very easy to try it. So I feel like these software effects or these software tools really, like they make the camera system so much richer to me and just a different experience than all the other devices. But the thing that really makes the Pixels this year the special phone, it's not the camera system, it's the price tag. $600 for a phone of this caliber is such a good deal. And the existence of the Pixel 6, it illuminates just how screwed up the pricing in the smartphone industry is right now. Like we have phones out there, like let's say OnePlus 9 as an example. That is a $730, I believe, phone. It's $100 and change more than this, but that thing doesn't have OIS, has a plastic frame, it doesn't have wireless charging, it has a pretty mediocre camera system. It like that exists in the same playing field as a $600 Pixel 6. And I love what this will do to the industry, right? No longer can a company make an $800 phone that is worse than this. You just can't, because this exists and is made by Google with years of software support and that new Tensor chip. So this chip is a good performer. It doesn't benchmark the best, but it's solid and it feels very responsive. Like even in the camera app and you're pushing it, it never really chokes. It does, however, throttle in games. Like on these devices, if you push it for long enough in games, you'll notice the drop in performance, but outside of that, these are some very fast chips. Now, if you're curious about some of the differences between them, just some stuff I noticed using it, the haptic motor, it's apparently the same hardware that's between the two phones, but they feel drastically different just because of where they're located. Like on the Pixel 6 Pro, the haptic motor is closer to the bottom. So when you're holding it in your hand, the vibrations are awesome. It's just like, they're powerful, they're very tactile. But on the regular 6, the motor's located up to the top, and it's like a more muted vibration. I don't love the way that it feels. But in your pocket, you can't really tell the difference. But for the people that enjoy a good haptic motor in hand, the 6 Pro wins by a long shot. Now, in terms of the screens, okay, so there's the obvious difference of like the flat screen on the 6, which I've always been a fan of, but this screen on the 6 does not get particularly bright. I don't have the instruments to measure nits on a phone, but based on my eye, I'd say that the 6 is like 10, maybe 15% dimmer than the Pixel 6 Pro screen. But they're both good screens, it's just a matter of brightness. Now, the refresh rate, the 120 versus the 90, no, there's no difference to me. At least not for what we usually use phones for. Okay, battery life. So I thought that the 6 Pro would have significantly better battery life, but they're both very similar to each other, and they're also very similar to the Pixel 5 from last year. And in terms of the speakers, the 6 Pro sounds better, but the 6 is actually pretty good, and there's no like obvious stereo left and right discrepancy like some other Pixels. Like it's a pretty even volume from both sides. The 6, like the regular 6, sounds more hollow to me. The 6 Pro sounds a little bit better. They both don't have face unlock. I'm kind of surprised about that for the 6 Pro. The 6 I get because the camera there is kind of balls, but on the 6 Pro, it seems good enough. I feel like they could have done it, but it's missing. You are reliant on the fingerprint, which is reasonably fast. It's not like super fast though. Now, my overall take on the Pixel devices this year, I like them a lot. It's just that if you have heightened expectations of what the camera's gonna be like, you gotta temper it. I feel like you're gonna be disappointed if you wanted this thing or expected this thing to be like the clear camera king. It's a really good camera system, but so is everybody else's stuff. And I think if you go into it with like weird expectations like I did, you're gonna be a little bit disappointed. But overall, easy recommendation. I like them a lot. It's just that I like them for different reasons than I thought it would originally before I opened the boxes. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. I'll see you guys next time.